Hello, welcome back to another campaign diary, the fifth, if I can still count. Yeah, so when last we left our heroes, they had collected all but one pieces of the sword, and they had hidden one piece of the sword somewhere else, inside of a muddy cave, essentially. And they were just staying over the goblin village that they helped liberate. In the past, the goblin village was ruled by a very cruel hobgoblin who basically wanted to rob travelers and kill people, and yeah, a whole bunch of nasty business. But now there is a pretty chill shamaness in charge of the village. Anyway, they were on their way again, but then the chieftain, Bonebreaker Shamaness Gypsy, was like, "Oh, could you please ask the people over in the local elven village if they could help us construct a road between their village and our village to promote safety and trade?" And the players were like, "Sure, but why don't you come with us so that you can ask them yourself?" And she acted very nervous about this and was like, "Oh, well, okay, sure, I guess I'll go." But yeah, basically the plan of the goblins was they are going to start constructing this road on their own to start with, and then hopefully the elves could meet them at the other end, just sort of meet in the middle, so they can construct a road together. So they went with a small group, and after 1 hour of walking, they arrived in the village where they were going to ask the local regent, "Hey, are you going to build this road?" And apparently, this wasn't the first time Shamaness Gypsy has suggested this, because the local regent was like, "Yeah, we've already discussed this with her. Again, you don't have money, so you cannot give us any taxes, and you don't produce any produce, I suppose, that we even want to have. So there's no point in building a road so we can trade with you, so we're not going to do it." And he added onto that, "Besides, your village has been very cruel to our village. Just because you have a new leader doesn't mean we have forgotten that." So yeah, that was not going to work. They learned about a certain nut that apparently is very prevalent in goblin tradition, and they were asking around to see if people know the nut. And then they met Malakir, and they already knew Malakir. That is someone with whom they killed an NPC, with whom they killed a necromancer. And they thought it was quite suspicious. They were already very suspicious of her before that, mainly because I gave her a name that is also the name of a vampire city in Magic the Gathering, so they were already suspicious of her. But when they started talking to her and discovered that, "Oh, you've been to the places we have been, also investigating the cult, and you have discovered that people from the cult that we have talked to have gone missing or have died, and you have dug up the piece of the sword we had buried." So now they were incredibly suspicious of her. But they didn't hurt her yet, I think. No, they didn't hurt her. They were on their way to the city where they were going to investigate more of the cult activities. And on their way there, they discovered an illegal mining operation. And now I have to tell a little bit of backstory. In the world, there are certain crystals, and if you hold one of these crystals and use one of these crystals to cast spells, your magic casting abilities will be amplified, so that's very good. However, if they grow unstable, they can essentially blow up in your face, and you will cast this incredibly hurtful spell on yourself. So they're also quite dangerous. And they're also used as a tool of power by the humans in this world. By giving out these crystals and keeping up the lie that you need these crystals in order to truly perform magic, they can essentially control who does and who doesn't use magic. So the humans really want these crystals, they don't have them anymore. The elves, they still have these crystal deposits, but they refuse to trade because they think these are very dirty politics. So the players were ready to attack these miners. But Malakir was all like, no, we should wait, we should tell the local regent, I mean, we're just on her doorstep, and everything will be okay. And after a whole bunch of grumbling and not trusting her and really just wanting to get some combat done again, they decided, okay, we're going to go to the local regent, or the local representative of the Elven Council, I suppose I should say. But they didn't go all at once, no, because they were still incredibly suspicious. So a few of them went into the inn and did some investigation, and Malakir brought two of the adventurers to the room, and they were richly rewarded actually, and the local regent was very happy, very pleased with what they've done. So it was not a trap, it was not a setup. And what actually made them consider going with Malakir's plan is Malakir said, listen, I am not just a random elf, I am known in the castle, in the palace. They know me, I have a high position, trust me on this. But she didn't tell them anything more than that, and they didn't ask any questions. So that's interesting, to say the least. But yeah, I'm just checking my notes here. What happened then? Oh, right. They had heard from Malakir that she had been investigating some strange business around a certain family grave in the church. So a few of the players went to the church, or temple, I suppose, and all the way in the back they discovered a door. And just before the fighter kicked down the door, someone else tried to open the door, and it wasn't locked. So that was absolutely fine, not a problem at all. And they decided to hide in the church until night fell, and then go down the stairs behind this door, because that is where the sort of mausoleum below the temple was, with a few of the family graves and crypts underground. And just outside one of these crypts, they saw just an elf just sitting there, possibly guarding it, except the crypt had been destroyed, essentially. The stone had been destroyed and everything. And they saw the elf saw them because they had cast a spell of light, or they lit some few candles, I can't recall. They had a light with them, is my point. And the elf got very upset and said, hey, what are you doing here? And someone rolled a perception check and passed it, and saw that this elf was wearing one of the pendants that the cultists use. So they all got out their pendants and said, hey, it's okay, you can trust us. And the elf asked, oh, are you reinforcement? And they went, why yes, we are indeed the reinforcement. And as they were just talking, the fighter, who has a shovel specifically for this purpose, he got behind the elf, he hit him on the back with the head of a shovel, and the elf fell unconscious. The elf cultist. I keep referring to him as the elf, but I was talking about a specific cultist. Okay, so now they gained access to this crypt. And they went into the crypt, and what they found was a dungeon. Yes, this dungeon had been disguised to look like a family crypt on the outside. And as they entered, there was a hall to the left, and a hallway to the right had recently been cut into the stone and supported with beams, so clearly some of the cultists had been mining. This is not the first time that they've encountered something like this, but the tunnel had collapsed, and they decided to go the left route first instead. And they came to a small altar chamber. I described it being an empty offering bowl and two banners with the same eye symbol they saw somewhere else before. And one of the players, who surprisingly had never played Pokemon Red, Blue or Yellow, said, I checked behind the banners, and indeed, there was a hallway behind the banners. And it was very narrow, and they had to choose who was going to go first, and so they did. After following this hallway for just a little bit, they came into a large room, and they were incredibly suspicious of it, which of course they should be. Someone made a perception check and saw a strange symbol on the floor before them. They stepped on that large flagstone, and it crumbled, and she fell down into a pit of spikes. She took a very, very large beating. Like, she lost a lot of health, but they could still pull her out, quickly cast some healing spells to stop the bleeding, and they left her in the antechamber, which, as a side note, was actually incredibly convenient because she had to leave early that night, so it works well with the story. We can just say, okay, we left her in the antechamber to heal and rest a little bit while the rest of us go further down into the dungeon, so that worked quite nicely. But yeah, someone else had a look around the dim room and saw a whole bunch of symbols on the floor, the same symbol that was on the flagstone that crumbled. So through a process of elimination, they were able to find a safe path through the room, with a few 1-meter jumps, but they could manage that just fine. Then they came into a room with two large altars, and on each altar there was a sort of crystal plaque embedded into the stone. And the fighter, he was like, okay, I'm going to kick the crystal. And I said, well, you're going to have to do one of those weird, kicks where you put your leg up and then quickly bring it down. He said, yes, I do just that. And as soon as his foot touched the crystal lit up and he couldn't move his foot away from the crystal anymore. Because on the altars was inscribed 2 lives. So there is a room with 2 altars, and on each altar it says 2 lives. So yeah. But they didn't stab him and sacrifice him just yet. They decided to go back out of the crypt, get the cultist they knocked unconscious, put him on the crystal, so now the fighter was free again. And then someone else tried to do something with the other crystal, thinking they were safe, but no, the crystal just sucked their hand to it, and it also lit up. But then both altars distinguished again, and the false barrier that was keeping them from progressing disappeared. Yes, the altars were not talking about sacrifice, they were just talking about the presence of 2 life forms. So, now that they passed this obstacle, they came to a portcullis in a very narrow hallway. And the mechanism was a little bit rickety, as though it could, if they had hoisted it, it could just fall back down again and separate the party possibly. And that was originally my plan, but they subverged that mean trap because of someone rolled a very high strength check, so it only seemed fair. But then they came into an oddly shaped room with a caved-in wall, which is where the cultist came in originally. And yeah, one of the cultists who looked starved, he looked very skinny, was lying on the ground. He had wrapped a bit of his rope around a sword piece so he could use it as a dagger. One of the players got close by. The cultist tried to stab the person getting close by, but he missed, because the players had heard about some cultists wanted to start their own subcult who wanted to rebel against the official cult and get all of the power instead of just a part of it. And this was one of these renegade cultists. But yeah, he missed, and they kill him immediately. And then something quite cool happened, if I may say so myself. From the altar rose... I'm not going to say the creature name, but as I think it might give away a lot. But I described it as being a human or humanoid-shaped entity made from clouds and energy and stuff like that. Rose from the altar, raised its hands, and then a few drawings of people that were on the wall. You know those drawings that you see on Greek vases and on and in Greek temples of like athletes and stuff like that? Those kinds of drawings. They peeled themselves up the wall, and now they had to fight this strange cloud entity and a few shadows. And the point about these incorporeal beings is that they're quite difficult to damage. Normal damage from non-magical weapons and a whole bunch of elemental magic doesn't harm them as effectively as you might harm other creatures. And they have some... I'm just going to move my mouse. Okay, don't know if you could hear that. And their attacks are actually quite mean, because they... the shadows reduced strength, and the fewer strength you have, the more likely you are to hit with melee attacks, thus the more likely that the shadows are going to win. And the sort of strange cloud-like entity reduced health. Well, of course, all damage reduces health, but no, this reduced maximum health. So you cannot heal back the damage that you had sustained, which made it, in my eyes, quite a tough fight. But they pulled through very well. None of them went unconscious at any point. And yeah, they defeated all of those incorporeal meanies, and then they decided to call it quits and say, okay, this is a natural place for us to stop. Let's continue next time. And indeed, let's continue next time. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Hello, and welcome back to yet another... I was about to say things you missed in Skyrim. That is the wrong video. Let me do that again. Hello, it's time for an... okay.